Before we get started with the presentations, just want to reopen what I mentioned last week, that so next week the topic will be writing an abstract, and the overall plan for that, we have Dr. Paula Gregory, who's a faculty member at the LSU Health Science Center in New Orleans. One of our partner institutions will be coming for the morning to talk about this. She's really a very experienced presenter. She does a lot with NIH training programs and gives talks on these kind of topics in Washington as well as around the country. And what she's going to do is take examples of abstracts for several different formats. So the abstract for a meeting presentation that you would submit to a meeting, abstract you might have at the beginning of a publication, or the abstract that you put in a grant. And she'll have examples of good abstracts and bad abstracts to go through. It's going to be a little more interactive than you're probably used to, so be ready to read and talk about. We'll be sending out a PDF of some of these abstracts ahead of time. I hope we'll have it before the weekend, but it may end up that you get it on Monday. So just to take a look through, and I've thought about them a little bit. But I still would very much like to offer still the option that if you have an abstract that you would like to have input on, this is, I think you've gotten the sense, a friendly environment, and most people have learned good skills about how to give thoughtful and collegial feedback. So it's an opportunity for you to have your abstract discussed, and we can do it. We won't name names. It's sort of obvious eventually whose abstract was what, because people find out what you're working on. So it's not, can't be totally anonymous about it, but the goal is not to make anybody feel bad, but just to give you a chance to get some feedback from a variety of people. So you get feedback from your peers as well as from Dr. Gregory and me. And so we really encourage you, if you have an abstract that you're ready to share, that you haven't totally put away for archived in the past now, but that where you're interested in improving it, that there's a great opportunity to get that to happen. So we'll need you to send your abstract by about 4 o'clock on Friday. So, you know, if you haven't started writing it yet, you may not be ready for this, but if you've got one that's 80% done, it might be worth taking advantage of this. And as we mentioned before, some of you we know are just preparing to do your research, so the abstract is a description of what you're planning to do. That's totally fine if you want to submit that as well, and that feedback both on the actual writing style, but also on the experimental design as well. So I don't want to, yes?
Can it be a specific game page?
I don't think so. That's just a little bit too much.
Okay.
But I'd encourage you that if you want feedback on a specific games page, the CCTS has good mechanisms to give you that. So talk to Jane or me afterwards, and we'll get you in the pipeline for that. So, okay, so today we have two topics. One is, the first one is Kay Smith, who is the person in the library system who has a special relationship with the CCTS and the School of Medicine. And so she's going to talk about ways to use the library system for literature searches particularly, but I think one of the things I hope you'll get out of this is recognizing that most of us don't go to the library very often anymore, but there's tremendous resources there, and particularly the people there can be a huge help to you in a lot of ways. So I hope she'll talk a little bit about the spectrum of things that you can get help with. After the break, we'll have another talk by Dr. Richard Darley-Wismar about giving oral presentations. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, well, as David said, I'm the liaison to the CCTS and also to School of Public Health here at UAB. And I'm also, my title includes Senior Research Librarian. So I've been around a while. I've been doing this kind of thing for a while. What I'm going to be talking to you today about is using library resources and services to help you in your research, especially in searching the literature. So my objectives are, after today's sessions, hopefully you'll be able to, figure out how to find books and resources for background information. We'll talk about that later about using, the types of questions you have, either background questions or foreground questions. And then we'll talk about using research articles to look into those foreground questions, the ones that you're looking for research on current studies in a particular area. And that would include how to do effective searches of the literature, including incorporating some advanced techniques, which I'm going to teach you as well. And then we'll talk about getting full text for the articles that you find both on and off campus, and using some of the tools to evaluate the quality of the studies that you find. Okay, GRADE is the one that's recommended by the Cochrane collaboration, but there are others that you can use as well. And knowing where to go for help, especially from the libraries. Okay. I understand there are some people that are coming in from different institutions. So even though a lot of my stuff is going to be focused on UAB, most of the stuff is transferable to whatever institution you're in. So just keep that in mind. And of course, if you have any questions, just stop me. I'm kind of going backwards on my objectives. So I'm going to start with where to find help. And so the library, of course, has a lot of help that will help you with your literature reviews and other research questions. So one of the things we offer are these research guides that are on a variety of topics. Actually, I want to show you some of these just to show you. So if you go to our website, that's not our website, that's PubMed. Go to our website, and you'll kind of scroll down in the middle of the website. You'll see a little statue of Hippocrates here, picture, and it says Research Guides, and you click on that link. I'm going to open up a new tab. And this is the Research Guides page. And you can see what we have on a variety of topics, so covering both libraries in the system. We have, the Lister Hill Library, where I work, is the library serving the health sciences schools, and the Stern Library serves the general academic library on campus. So these guides are from both areas, and you can see on the left-hand sidebar here, the top 20 guides give you a kind of example of the range that we offer, including things like, using PubMed, using EndNote or a bibliographic citation software program, how to cite your sources, doing good poster presentations, using other databases such as Embase or CINAHL, how to find health statistics. There are all kinds of really good resources here. And here's one I'll show you with the from making the most of my NCBI, which if you're going up for a grant might be really useful to you especially. But it's useful for a lot of things actually. And you can see in the different tabs you have about my NCBI, how to create an account, saving searches, using my bibliography, creating bio sketches. So there's a lot of different information in these guides, and usually a link to somebody that specializes, in this case it's me, okay, and the information of how to get in touch, okay. Besides these research guides, if we go back, you'll notice that across the top ribbon here, there's a little help button there. And so you can go to that help button and find out more information about how to get in touch with your librarian, including we provide like one-on-one consultation services that if you're looking for a particularly complicated topic or whatever you're looking for. We'll sit down with you, we'll make appointments and go over your topic, discuss the different databases you might want to consider and the different approaches you might want to take with your search strategies to get the best results, okay? So we do that all the time. You can text us, you can also chat with us, and you'll see this little yellow pull-out thing here. I don't even know if anybody's at the library yet, but I'm going to try. So, hey, at CCTS, okay. We'll see if somebody's there paying attention. So you just whenever you happen to need need help with something, somebody's joined me and they said hi. Okay, so you just kind of pop that up and say, put in your question, and that's how you do it. Okay. So those are some help features at the libraries. Okay. Let's go back to our thing here. All right. Again, it talks about the Ask a Librarian. So now let's talk about getting full text articles. So again, I'm kind of going backwards from my objective. So this is a big question we get a lot. I'm having trouble connecting to the full text of this article that I really need. So what you want to do, you want to start with the website, the library website, whatever you're searching. Okay, whether it's PubMed, which is a free database to everybody. You still want to go through the library website to get to these resources, because that helps you authenticate as a UAB user and gets you access to the content that we subscribe to on your behalf, okay? So you start at that, you do your search, all right? And when you're looking in the abstract view in PubMed, you'll see this, the full text links, including the publisher link usually, and our link resolver, which is called UAB article linker. So it's got a circle on there. And you click on that, and it opens up this new little window that says, great, we've got that article. And so you click on where it says the article link. And if you're off campus, it says, I need your Blazer ID and password, okay? And so you put that in, and you get your full text. Oh, somebody's going off. Okay, so those of you that are at different institutions, this will also work for your, this is pretty ubiquitous at other institutions as well. So it works much the same way. They'll have these link resolvers set up so that as long as you go through the library site, you can usually authenticate wherever you are in the world to get to your library's resources that they subscribe to on your behalf. Now, what happens when you don't have, we don't have the article? We can't subscribe to everything. So in this case, the link resolver window will come back and say, I'm sorry, we don't have that one. But you have these different options underneath here. And first option is Google Scholar. We'll talk a little bit more about Google Scholar later, actually. But one thing it's really good for is to find full text of stuff, that you're looking for. So if you click on that hypertext link that says by article title, it'll populate the search for you, and if you're lucky, you'll find the PDF there. Sometimes though it doesn't have it, so just be aware that we do offer a free interlibrary loan service to you, which is very fast. It's usually under 24 hours now. So they've gotten it down, the time down considerably, and you get the PDF. It's if you click on this request link here from the article linker page, it populates the form for you, so you don't have to fill it out. Yeah, so you just have to, log in with your Blazer ID and password. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't used that recently, but my recollection is that it used to have a place where you indicated whether you were willing to pay for what you were getting.
Yeah.
But I've never had to pay, so I just wonder if it's if it happens that you have to pay, or if it's,
No, it's free. It's free. Yeah, it used to be we had to charge for it, but now it's totally free to you. It's not free to us, unfortunately. Okay. Any more questions about interlibrary loan or getting full text, getting full text, or getting help, that kind of thing? Okay. Oh, I forgot about this. These are some other routes to full text. Again, Google Scholar. There are ways you can actually set up Google Scholar wherever you are to look for your institution's full content, okay, within the setup, by the way. And so sometimes it won't automatically connect to your library, so you have to look for your institution and add it in there. Just be aware of that. EndNote is another way to get full text. They have a find full text feature. I know that people in the medical side of campus sometimes don't have access to EndNote, so but if you do, it's a really handy feature to use that. And then browsing is something you can use on your mobile devices to read full text. Yes, ma'am.
Where does Google Scholar get its papers? Because sometimes it looks like something shouldn't be available. And so on your stuff. How do they get around that?
For the people on online, the question was, where does Google Scholar get its full text when it may not be may not appear to, it should be available. So that's a good question. Google Scholar, they've had some issues with copyright before, so sometimes it's but sometimes people just post those PDFs up there, and you just use them if you can. That's all I can say.
There are some sites like ResearchGate that the authors can upload their full PDF on the site, and anyone who's on ResearchGate, ResearchGate account can access those full articles, even if they're not available anywhere else. So
yeah.
I don't know if Google Scholar gets some of those.
They
sometimes when I go to Google Search, it will send me to ResearchGate, and I can get access to the full PDF on that website that I account. And that some of those just upload the full article.
But even on ResearchGate, they ask you, do you have permission to upload this? And the journal will sometimes tell you do not have permission.
Some of the they will just upload it there for you to
I know, I do.
I have access to my account, so it's the author's responsibility to upload the full article.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get into too far in the weeds in copyright law right now, but ResearchGate does allow that, and sometimes they also on ResearchGate you can contact the author and ask them to send you a copy, and that's just not really making it available to everybody, just you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so now we're going to kind of get into the meat of the presentation, which is, finding the information to support your work, okay? And so let's talk about this. First, I mentioned we're going to talk about the type of questions that you're asking. You have to start with that. All right, are you looking for what we would call a background question? Are you looking for just like an overview of the topic and kind of a refresher? In that case, you would want more book information, information from a review article or something like that. The other type would be a foreground question, which you're looking for, the recent research on that particular topic, all right, the recent studies. And you'd look for original research studies and maybe systematic reviews in that case, okay? And this is important so you know which resources to use within the library, actually. So in the first case, in the background questions, if we go to our site again, you're looking, say, okay, you want just some general pediatrics information or something out of a textbook. So that's definitely a background question. You'll notice on the site, there's this big box right here in the top on our website. And it says search collections, and the scope on the right is defaulted to everything. And we have a federated search of the catalogs of both libraries, all the libraries actually in the UAB library system. And it also searches in some cases some of the individual papers within certain resources as well. So if you search everything, it's going to be kind of like doing a Google search, and you might be kind of overwhelmed. So what I usually tell people to do is click on this advanced link here. Even if you've never used it before, click on that advanced link. And you want to change that search scope from everything to either the library catalog, or say you want an ebook. We'll do that. So I just want an ebook of pediatrics. So you can then go down to where it says the pull down menu for any field. And you can either choose the title or the subject. I know, for example, I want Nelson Pediatrics. So I'm going to put that in the title field. I'm going to click on search, and I get 2 results down at the bottom, and they're both contain ebooks. Well, the first one is Textbook of Pediatrics, and the second is the Essentials of Pediatrics. So we want the first one. And you can either just link directly to the online access here on the results page, or you can open up the full record by clicking on the title, and then click on the view the full text, and it'll pull up. This is within Clinical Key. No, I don't want to do the survey. Thank you. Bless you. And Clinical Key is going to be slow today. Sorry. But it does work. Okay. All right. And there are the table of contents that we can go to for Nelson Pediatrics. All right. So that's kind of background questions. All right. So let's go back. Now let's talk about finding journal articles with then foreground questions. This slide gives kind of the basic steps for finding journal articles. It's pretty simple. You identify the correct databases that you need to use. You use effective search techniques. You select your appropriate articles out of your results, and then you access the complete articles. But it takes some practice actually to get good at doing this. So to librarians especially, searching the literature is an art form. And there's not actually any one right way to do a search. There are different ways to approach it. And just as, building your muscles in your body takes repetition and time and effort, so does becoming an effective searcher. So I'm hoping to give you some of the tools to do that today. So how do you choose a relevant database? Well, you can start with our A to Z databases page for one thing. I'll go back to that again. So go back to my home page here for Lister Hill Library. And scroll down, and there's a databases page right here under Lister Hill Library Resources that I'm going to link to. Open that up. And this is the databases page. So you can see at the top there are over 400 databases that we link to or make available to you. So there's quite a few out here covering just about everything. And you may think, oh man, I can't go through 400 listings here. So we do have some finding aids at the top as well. There's a pull down menu where it says you can look by broad subject area. Say you're looking for evidence-based practice. Here I am again. And we have some suggested, we have some databases that are really relevant in that area that might be useful to you that we've collected for you, okay? So also there you can look by type of material. It says all database types, but it's really the type of resource that you're looking for. Say you're interested in looking for test instruments in particular. So there's a collection of databases on, on test instruments. But we've collected some here for you. And you notice there are also some trial databases that were over to the right, or new databases that we've added. You might want to keep an eye out on those too. All right, and try those out for us. So that's one way. Another way is, again, to ask your librarian for help in identifying databases that are really good for your area, since we work with this a lot. Again, you can just go from that databases page and pop open that chat feature and pop in your question. I'm having trouble finding a database, that's on this particular topic area. Can you help me? All right. Oops, back to this is actually the UAB Libraries homepage, by the way. So we do have one site for everybody, just in case you're curious about that. All right. All right, so get back. All right, so the primary medical databases that we use are, PubMed, of course, Embase, CINAHL, which is the Nursing and Allied Health Literature Database, and Scopus, which is kind of a bibliographic citation database. I won't have time actually to go through all of these today with you. I'm probably going to focus mostly on PubMed, but the approach that I'm going to be taking with the PubMed search that I'm going to be demoing for you is one that I use generally across all databases. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The first thing we want to do when we're talking about setting up our literature search is we want to start with an answerable question. Okay, a lot of people, they'll start with questions that are really overly broad or really specific, and what you have to do is kind of find the sweet spot between that. You don't want to be so broad that you're just kind of buried in results and spending a lot of time going through irrelevant stuff. But you also don't want to be so specific that you're maybe missing some things that might be relevant to you. Okay. So one formula that's set up to help you in this is the PICO formula. And this kind of helps you set up an answerable question. The P stands for population or the problem. The I stands for the intervention, investigation, or if it's an epidemiology study and exposure. The comparison is C, and that's optional. And then O is for the outcomes. Okay, and this really just kind of helps you. It helps you, focus your search, but it also helps you identify concepts. And this is important in setting up your search strategy, is identifying the building blocks of your search strategy. All right, and those are the concepts. So I've got some examples on the screen of some less well-designed questions and some questions that have been improved somewhat. So the first one is, the first example is, are condoms effective in preventing HIV? Well, that might be, you might be kind of getting into the weeds when you get into the literature searching for that. So possibly you could focus your population a little bit more by saying, in men who have sex with men, does condom use, the intervention, reduce the risk of HIV transmission, the outcome? Okay, and presumably the comparison would be lack of condom use, right? Similarly, with the other question here, which interventions reduce health inequalities among people with HIV? We could make that a little bit better by maybe saying, in women with HIV, do peer-based interventions reduce health inequalities? So what's the population there? And the intervention? Peer-based intervention, yeah. And what's the outcome? Reducing health inequalities, yeah. Okay. All right, good. And so those are our concepts. So from those questions, say my first, from this last one we did, my first concept would be I'm looking for population women with HIV. That's one concept. The second concept would be peer-based interventions, and the third concept would be health inequalities. So that's what I would use to build my search strategy when I start searching, okay? All right. So PubMed is kind of the gold standard biomedical literature database. It's produced by the National Library of Medicine. We're going to talk a little bit more about PubMed. I'd like to talk a little bit about Google Scholar, though. I'm going to divert here for a little bit. People use Google and Google Scholar a lot in academia and everywhere. And it's a great search engine. I use it a lot myself. I have an issue with using it to search for topics, because you can get really awash in results, and it's hard to get through all this. I'm going to give you an example. I do some work with the Department of Pediatrics and an evidence-based practice project, and one of the questions I got was, okay, what's the evidence for the usefulness of induced sputum versus gastric aspirate for diagnosing pediatric tuberculosis? Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to take that search and we're going to put it in both Google Scholar and PubMed and show you the difference. All right, so go back to my Lister Hill page. Notice that on the Lister Hill Library page, we've carved out these main databases for you at the top here. So I want to go to Google Scholar, so I'm going to click on that tab, open that up, and I'm just going to put in my keywords, all right? Except I'm not on the right keyboard, right? Okay, induced gastric aspirate. I'm going to put child tuberculosis. Sometimes when you put pediatric, it's going to be looking. It's going to look for the field.
Would you want to add the word diagnosis or diagnostic in there too?
I could. Okay. I've got 12,900 results, all right? And, a lot of these will be really good and very useful to you. You can also, use some of the filters on the side to, focus your search. I can check off the box that says include patents, so I'm not including that, but I'm still over 12,000 references. I can do different things. All right, I'm gonna take the same exact search here, and let's see if I can find here it is. There's PubMed, and I'm gonna plug that in and see what I get. I get 47. A little bit more manageable, and
Google Scholar pulling from a lot more places, though.
I'm sorry.
Would Google Scholar be pulling from a lot?
Oh yeah, yeah. The question for those online, wouldn't Google Scholar be pulling from a lot more places? Yeah, it's pulling from a much broader field than PubMed is. But my thing is, okay, even though, all right, PubMed is going to be more limited in its scope of what it's covering, sometimes you want that, especially if you're looking for a particular topic, so that you're using a biomedical literature database here, and it's already focused on the type of information you're going to be looking for in this, and you want to get you want to focus your results as much as you can without having to go through a lot of stuff that's not of interest to you. It's my thing. I've been a librarian for 30 years now. I'm really old. And so when we started out, our questions were more like, I can't find anything on this topic. Well, now I'm finding too much. I'm buried. I'm drowning. So help me target, focus my search. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I really like about Google Scholar is the ability to search forward and to see where who's cited. Is there any way to do that in PubMed?
Not in PubMed, but in other resources like Scopus. That's one thing I use Scopus for a lot. So I'm sorry, the question for those online was the person said she uses Google Scholar because you can see who cited the article, which is very helpful, definitely. PubMed does not have that ability, but Scopus does. And that's what I use it for a lot, so that I can plug in, if I find one's really relevant, I can plug it into Scopus and do the same thing, or Google Scholar. But and also another problem I have with Google Scholar is that it's hard to manage the results, you know. And there are things that you can use like Link Clipper and stuff like that to actually load your results into a spreadsheet. But it's just not as clean as being able to use a database and import the results into a citation manager or something. I just but that's maybe my prejudice. I don't know. But anything else? I just wanted to show you the difference, and it does make a difference to me anyway, not have to go through so many results.
Do you do the search that way, or do you create the mesh with the and the or when you do it yourself?
Yes, I'm going to be showing you how to do that. Yeah, this is just a basic search. All right, and actually, when you look in the, I want to show you the search details on the right-hand side of the screen. If you click on where it says "See More," you can see that when in the background, what PubMed is doing with those keywords that I plugged in, it's dividing it up into the component parts, okay? And it's within those component parts, it's ordering together the mesh terms, the controlled vocabulary subject headings with the keywords, okay? So you can see what it does with your search there. All right. So let's go back just a little bit more to the slides. Okay, so PubMed again is gold standard biomedical literature database. It's over 29 million citations. A lot of people use the word PubMed and Medline kind of interchangeably. They're not really the same thing. Medline is the actual database of references that are fully indexed with these mesh controlled vocabulary headings assigned to them. Besides Medline, PubMed also includes these in-process citations that are automatically added by the publishers into the PubMed database, and most of those eventually are indexed into Medline, but it takes a little while. And one reason you want to do those kind of combination of controlled vocabulary terms and keyword searching within each concept, okay, within each building block, is to get at both those fully indexed references from Medline as well as those in-process citations, so that you're getting both, okay? And those mesh is really useful for creating really efficient searching. Let me show you. So this is a record from PubMed, and it's got some mesh terms assigned to it. And so we open those up. You can see that like there are lots and lots of mesh terms assigned to this one article. And these indexers at the National Library of Medicine are experts in that particular field, so they know which ones to apply. And it's just an efficient way of getting at a lot of these articles that may have been use different descriptors by different authors to describe the same thing. Okay, so it's really good to use those controlled vocabulary headings when you have them. Okay, and I'll show you how to find those in a PubMed search. So again, in searching PubMed, you want to start with an answerable question. Using that PICO formula. If it's sometimes it's, you don't have to. You can just, separate out your concepts and stuff and go from there, but it's really helpful. You can use that search details box to check your search, to see what's happening in the background, especially if you're doing a basic search. And then, use those mesh headings and subheadings to focus, and really do an efficient search. I'm going to show you how to use the Advanced Search Builder, which is a really useful tool in PubMed to combine, especially in combining searches and focusing your results further. Linked full text using that link resolver, and use wildcard symbols. Usually the asterisk is pretty common across databases. It's not just PubMed for root words. I'll show you some examples of that in a little bit as well. Quotation marks around phrases, or again, that's another common technique to use to force it to look for a phrase instead of the words within, anywhere they happen to fall. And we were talking about this earlier. PubMed doesn't include everything. So especially if you're doing any kind of comprehensive search, especially a systematic review, you can't stop with PubMed. All right, it's not going to be it's not global. It doesn't cover everything. And again, ask your librarian for help if you get stuck. Okay. So let's do our demo. Okay, so this is the main page of PubMed, and for a demo search, let's say, okay, measles have been in the news a lot lately. Let's say we want to find studies of behavioral interventions to improve measles vaccine acceptance by parents. Okay, so my concepts are basically, the measles vaccine, kind of behavioral interventions, and maybe I can add in parents there. We'll see how many I get when I first do it. So you see, I'm not really actually using the Pico format, but I am identifying my concepts. So we'll just start with I usually start with like a basic search just to see what's going on, if I can, figure out some things. Some better ways to search something. So we'll just start with a basic search: measles vaccine behavior. So let's search that. All right, so got 500. And if I scroll down to look at the search details again on the right-hand side, and I click on See More, I can see it it just looked at my two different concepts, measles vaccine and behavior. And measles vaccine is a mesh term, apparently. All right. And then behavior is another one, another mesh term that I could use. So let's see if we can't make this a little bit better, though. So I'm going to show you how to do this kind of expert search, and just if you forget how to do this, when you're going through it, just ask us for help. We'll get you through it. So I'm going to go back to my home page, and to find the mesh term, just to show you, if you didn't know where it was, you go into the mesh database. On the right-hand side, and I go into measles vaccine, because I know that's one. This is the record in the mesh database to tell you about this controlled vocabulary term. It gives you a definition of measles vaccine, when it was introduced, and it gives you the subheadings that we could, add to this search term if we wanted to. Okay, and well, maybe we won't worry about those right now. There are quite a few different things you can go from, metabolism to standards to therapeutic use, whatever. Then there's the possibility that I can restrict to mesh major topic. I can make measles vaccine the main point of the articles that I pull up. I don't think I'm going to do that right now, actually. So, and I also, when you go a little bit further in this record, you'll go down to the hierarchy of databases, the hierarchy of subject headings, and you'll see where measles vaccine falls, okay? And it also has a more specific heading underneath it for MMR vaccine. So if I don't tell it otherwise, it's going to automatically include those more specific headings underneath, okay? So, and I do want to include that. So I'm going to leave that as it is. And the way you tell it not to, by the way, is this little checking this box underneath the mesh major topic box that says do not include the mesh topic found in this term. All right. Now I'm going to scroll back up, and you notice over to the right-hand corner, there's PubMed Search Builder. And what I can do is just click on the button that says add to the search builder, and it pops that in there. And I click on search PubMed, and it's going to run it for me, run the search, just on that mesh term, okay? Now we're working in our first concept, our first building block for this search, all right? And I've got 8,000 references on measles vaccine, but we're not done yet. So I'm going to click on where it says the advanced link up at the top. And this opens up that advanced search builder I was telling you about, all right? Now at this point I can add in some keywords to or together with that measles vaccine mesh term to fill out that concept. So within the builder there, I click on there where it says all fields, and I'll scroll down, and I want to put measles and vaccine in the title. I want it to be kind of important. So not just anywhere in the record. So I'll do measles and in one field, and then the next one I'll do the same thing. I'll change the pull down menu to the title. And in this case, I'll do vaccine, and I'll end at the end and use that truncation symbol, the asterisk, okay, for vaccine, vaccination, whatever, okay. And then I'll also put or within that field and do immunization, but I'll end that with the Z and put in the truncation symbol, okay? And I'm ending that with the measles. And instead of searching, I'm going to click where it says add to history, and it'll pop it down into this history section down here that keeps track of all my searches, all right? So now within that concept, I can OR together with those keywords with the mesh term, and I do that by going where it says add to builder beside each relevant search strategy that I used. So it's number 4 with the measles vaccine mesh term, and I click on add, it pops that up in the builder. And then I do the same thing with number 5 for the keywords and add that, and it pops that up in the builder. And I change the Boolean operator in the builder, the pull down menu from the default to and to the or operator. I want either one, okay? And I'll click on add to history, and I've completed my first building block of my search strategy, all right? And it's there. I've got 9,000 references. But we still have to look for behavioral interventions. Okay, so I'm going to go back home and I'm going to do the same thing now with behavioral interventions. Remember, the mesh term that was identified in the basic search was behavior. So let's take a look at that. We'll look at the mesh database. I can't type today, sorry. All right. And the first one that pops up is behavior. We'll take a look at that. There are others you can see in the result list that might be useful. But I'm going to look at this general behavior. Okay, and again, it's pulling up the record in the mesh database, and the different has the different subheadings that can be applied to it. And we're going to scroll down and look at the hierarchy and look at all the more specific headings under behavior that we can use. There are a lot more. Now, one thing I want to look for, there's an interesting thing on under health behavior, which is a more specific heading in itself. There's one on treatment adherence and compliance. And actually that one itself has headings underneath it. You can tell that has a little plus sign beside it. So if I click on that just to change it and look at that, and I'll look at the hierarchy under that term, one of those is patient acceptance of healthcare. And that's really what we're getting at, right? Okay. So let's change it. Let's say we don't want behavior general. We want it to be this patient acceptance of healthcare. This is a really good term for us to use. So it's defined as the patient's willingness to receive healthcare, and that's what we're looking for. So, and you can see under that there's still more specific headings that are under that, including patient participation and stuff like that. But we're just going to leave it as it is. And again, go back to the PubMed search builder. Click on add to search builder, pop it in there, and search PubMed. All right. So it's going to be looking for that. And then with this one, I need to, when I go to the advanced search builder again, to add my keywords, I have to be kind of creative with my my keywords here. So we can, just think of different ones we can use. And I'll just put this in the title or abstract field instead of the title. And I'll do, acceptance. So I'm not typing right. Or, let's see, compliance. Or behavior. And I'll end that with an asterisk. Let's see, what else? Attitude, maybe, if you want to. All right, we'll just use those. And I'll add that to the history. And this, now I'll go back down to the history section and combine my mesh terms with those keywords. So again, I'm using that add to builder from the history section and changing the and to an or. And we'll just pop those in there. Okay. Now, getting at, people, I get a lot of questions when I get to this point, say, okay, how do you get to the intervention part of it? You're looking for interventions. In PubMed, that's not really well defined, so what I usually do is kind of look for the studies that would be looking at interventions. So those are kind of like, clinical trials and that kind of thing. So one thing I want to show you, remember we were talking about those guides. There are filters that you can use within PubMed to get at clinical trials, but I wanted to show you this as well. The PubMed, again, those research guides are available that you can choose from, but we also have our guides for different these databases linked to them right here as well. So I'm going to click on the PubMed guide, open that up. And, in this guide for PubMed, besides giving you all the search techniques and stuff, there's a little tab at the end called hedges. And what a hedge is, it's a preformed search string to get at, kind of tricky, concepts in a particular database. And we have them for different databases. And if you scroll down there, they're on all different kinds of topics. And there are more than is just available here. But if we use just the Cochrane highly sensitive search strategy for identifying RCTs, let's just do that. What you do is you go down here and you just highlight that string, okay, and copy it, and come back. Oops, no. Yeah. Come back and just pop it in that all fields box in the search builder and add to history. And it just gives you this big field of RCTs. So now what I'm going to do is combine all my building blocks, okay? First, I'm going to look for the search string in the history that has our measles vaccine, which is number 6 here. And the measles, the mesh term and the keyword. So I'll add that to the builder by clicking on add. And then I'll look at the patient acceptance of healthcare string with the keywords. That's number 13. I'll add that in there. And then I'll add the ones with the RCTs, and I'll search. And we have 33. Okay. And if you scroll down, there's the first one's not that good, but there's some really good ones on using a smartphone app, to increase parents' knowledge and empowerment in MMR vaccinations, decisions, all kinds of really, really good studies here that are available.
And just to clarify, you connected all those with or, not and?
No, in that case, I connected all the building blocks with and. I'm sorry. Yeah, within the concept, you're going to or together your mesh terms and your keywords. But combining all the different concepts together, you're going to use and. So it's that search builder is really handy to use, and I really encourage you to try to familiarize yourself with that. I'm sorry for those were online. The question was when to use the or operator and the and operator in combining these strings. Okay, so we've got a good set here, and again, we could probably find more in Google Scholar, but I like my little set here. And you can see that with these include both the in-process citations and the ones that are fully indexed with mesh terms. Well, I think I had some that are in process. Yeah, maybe not. Okay.
Does it in process mean that the full PDF is available, or is it that early version?
Well, no, it's just the abstract information has been added by the publisher. The question was, does in process mean the full text is available? Not necessarily, no. So to look at the full text, what it means is if it's in process, it doesn't have these mesh terms. So you see these mesh terms assigned to the reference. To get to the full text again, you go to these link buttons. So if I wanted this one, I click on the article linker to see if we have it. It pops up that new window, and yay, we have it. And I click on the article link. There it is. And I can download the PDF in there. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, again, this is an advanced search technique. So it's going to take some practice to get used to doing this way. But it's really helpful, and it really gives you some really good targeted results for what you're looking for. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get you toward. Now, the other databases, again, Embase is another gold standard biomedical literature database. And I don't have time to go into it today, but again, you take that same approach, and instead of mesh terms, they have entry headings, and you do the same thing, ORing together those controlled vocabulary terms with the keywords, and then combining your concepts together with the AND operator, okay? And it also has an advanced field feature where you can pull those together, and the other databases as well. The only other things I had to go over with you today were, do y'all have MyNCBI accounts? Okay. Those are really useful for you for a lot of reasons. So if you don't have one, you might want to do that. You can save your searches, if you save your search strategies, save collections of results, things like that. So they're pretty handy. And again, yes, sir?
My question is, can I use my account, because I have an account, can I use it to have alerts if there's any publication about my subject?
Oh, yeah.
How can I do that?
You can, what I do is set up my search, strategy, my topic, save them the alert in the create alerts. Let me show you. Sorry. I know my time is going up, but okay, under this search where it says create alert, so I can create an alert here and say I want to be apprised of any new references added to this search strategy every month or every week or whatever is useful to you.
Yes. Okay. Can I get this sent to my email? That's connected to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
It's a little off topic, but do you have any recommendations for databases to kind of store literature as you accumulate, like papers or Mendeley or anything like that?
Yeah, I use EndNote a lot, but you can use EndNote or Mendeley. We offer Mendeley at UAB now, and some people use Zotero, but I use EndNote a lot if you have access to it.
You just save the PDF on the EndNote file and then make folders for your different topics within EndNote? Or?
Yeah, you have different libraries for your different subjects. And you can use EndNote to actually find the full text and pull up the PDF for you. So, I'm sorry, these are questions about bibliographic citation programs to keep track of your citations, and how to use MyNCBI to send you alerts when new references are coming out on the same search that you're particularly interested in your research. Okay, so I don't know if I have time to get to this. I did want to mention that, part of your research is, appraising the quality of the studies that you're, pull up in your results. So, again, grade is the one that's recommended by Cochrane. There are others that that are available. And basically what they all do is they start with this, the pyramid of studies, that they go with the lowest lowest quality of evidence with expert experience at the bottom, going up to RCTs and systematic reviews at the top. So the higher up in the pyramid, the higher the quality of the evidence, so if the study is done well. So what you do from that point is use these quality appraisal checklists to ask questions and say, okay, are there any limitations to the study? Is there bias? Do they have, do they account for people at the end that were lost to follow up and stuff like that? So there are a lot of different appraisal checklists that are available. And again, if you go into our guides, our systematic review guide has links to several of those. So they're freely available and you can make use of those. Any other questions? I gotta make way for the other speaker.
Yeah, I think I hate to cut things off, but I think we do need to take a very short break. And so I think one of the messages here is that the library staff are extremely accessible and eager to interact. So if you have questions that haven't been addressed yet today, please feel free to get in contact with Kay, and you know how to reach her now through the website. And thank you very much. Okay, we'll take a couple of minute break. Cheers.
I was already like a non-degree student. Oh yeah.
So I wasn't was that the last thing?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Or
Oh my gosh. No, if you're like non-degree speaking, it's like just filling out like a degree.
Stay if you feel like it. Yes.
You're telling me how bad my presentation is.
Yeah. But knowing that is actually quite empowering in many ways. You've got a difficult thing to put across, actually. So you've got an interesting challenge, actually. So there are other ways you could do it, in fact. Yeah, but it's a difficult thing to portray, right? No, I think it's a very interesting topic. I want to say that, but it's a thinking about how to. Well, this is potentially an extremely boring topic, honestly. So you have to, have to put a bit of thought in how to make it not boring, right? But there are some tricks you could use actually to make it more better. Well, I wasn't there at the beginning, so be fair, but when you get into these exercise things, if you engage the audience and let them drive the questions, not you, right? So you also experience what question? Yeah, like you could say, what do you think about that? Yeah, and you can ask them.
Last year, didn't give it. It was one of her whatever underlings. I think it was to read.
Then you can get them to build the thing. And you say, well, now the problem I've got, what was it, 100,000 or something stupid? When you first just put measles, it was like some ludicrous number. And you say, well,
but then George Howard did really good.
if you want to, I have to think a bit of that. If you want to come over to the time, we can talk it through. Yeah, sure, of course.
What is your thing?
But in your case, I think, your challenge is to, it's the same challenge that you can on the slide. Don't use this one, do use that. Right? Don't use this background, do use that one. You know, it can be very good. But if you then sort of how look at it from another, how do you get participation and how do you get engaged? Right.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll give you a call.
Do feel free.
So we have about 15 or so people online. So
All right.
I'll try to run around the microphone if people have things to say.
All right.
But if you can repeat questions.
I'll try.
That would be great.
How long have I got for this?
Well, should be, we need to go over this.
No, I'll try and get it online.
Okay, we're getting ready to start again. So there are people who weren't here at the start. I just want to make people aware that next week we'll be talking about how to write an effective abstract. And so if you have an abstract of your own that you'd like to have discussed as part of the process, if you submit it to me and Jean by 4 o'clock on Friday this week, we'll make sure it gets distributed. And the speaker next week is Dr. Paula Gregory, who's coming from LSU to give the presentation and make sure she has it in advance so that she can give it some thought ahead of time. This is meant to be a very positive collegial environment, so I will do everything I can to make sure that nobody's feelings get hurt and that it's all a very positive building experience. I wanted to be explicit that this is open to people who are joining us online as well. Next week, we will try opening the microphones from the start so that you can be involved in the discussion from the beginning. If we have too much background noise, we'll have to adjust that a little bit, but we would like to make it a really interactive session. So please think about submitting your abstract for discussion. So the next presentation is Dr. Victor Darley-Usmar, who is in the Department of Pathology. He's the Associate Dean for Research in the School of Medicine. He's occupied a lot of different roles along his life. I don't know if you're going to talk about that.
No, not really.
Career along the way. He started out in the pharmaceutical drug development side of things and then came back to the university and has been at UAB for
20 plus years.
So I'm not going to take any more of his time, but he's an expert in free radical biology and but also has given a lot of thought about how people communicate. And his talk today is new approaches to effective presentations and communications.
Thank you. Well, we're going to have a little bit of fun of this and a little bit of interaction. So this makes this all work a lot better, I think. So all of us were, any of you know what late woebegone is? Yeah, it's the radio thing, right? And his phrase is, it's a radio thing, and it's about ordinary American life. And his phrase is, everybody is slightly above average, right? Now, that's an interesting thing because you're all some kind of scientist, researcher in various different fields and so on. And although we'd all like to think we're very special, in reality, it's a competitive world, isn't it? And the one thing that can make a difference between, if you've got 20 people with exactly the same credentials, exactly the same talents, exactly the same grant funding, exactly the same portfolio, and believe me, you know, if you do a job search, you'll find that's true. One thing that tells the difference is communication. Now, communication is something, all of you have some technical expertise of some sort or another, and you get training on that, don't you? You wouldn't let anybody in, I wouldn't let anybody in the lab play with my nice new equipment without training, right? And you need training for interpretation. You need training to do searches like we just had. You need training to do communication. And communication actually follows basic principles, and I'm going to try and outline those for you and give you some practical hints. So why invest in communication? I've given you some reasons. What do you think? Yeah, why would you invest in communication?
Because it's the only way so that other people know what you're doing. And
that's very good. Let's go with that. What do you think?
It can help people appreciate the value of their contributions.
What do you think?
I think it will improve the efficiency of what we do in science in general.
Very good, very good. You're fairly attuned, aren't you? You be more persuasive, which translates into getting more funding. Inspire, that means your students work harder for you. I mean, you've all been students, I was. You work hard for the people who are really engaged and really interested, don't you? Improved presentation. From presentations come collaborations. If you do a great job in a presentation, I promise you, and some of you have experienced it, somebody will come up to you at the end and say, you know, when you said about that, we're working on that, can we work together? Excite your audience, opens doors. There are two ways to get jobs. One is to look at Nature or Science or somewhere else and see if a job is advertised and apply. This is when somebody comes to you, I loved your talk, we've got a job opening, would you come and visit? Already you've got a leg up, okay? Already you have an advantage. I'm using a lot of British terms here. I just came back from England last night, so I'm not adjusted back yet, right? Forgive me. It compels curiosity, you mentioned that, right? So that makes you a prime mover. What's a prime mover? What's a prime mover?
Like one of them, people who is making the most progress in the field.
Not most progress, actually. Not necessarily. What's a prime mover?
Oh, I have no idea.
It's somebody, well, very honest, right? We'll come back to that in a minute, that kind of honesty. What's a prime mover?
A leader, maybe?
Someone who makes something happen, that makes the field move. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes it's done from the top, but often it's done from the bottom. Prime movers are the people who put the sessions together for conferences, to get this person and that person together, who get the people together to make a PPG. That is a prime mover, right? Oh, increase the impact of your work. You all work very hard. You all do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of investment, a lot of money. You need to get the best value you can. This is not about salesmanship. This is not about spinning. This is about getting the best value for the work that you've got. And you're obligated to do that, really, because, you know, you're being funded to do things not for you and other people, but for the public generally, if you get federal funding at least. So lots of motivations there to get it right.
Can you say one more word about that? Because it seems like sometimes the successful people are the spinners and the sales.
Well, there are some talents. I will show you techniques in here, which are exactly the same techniques you would use to sell something, right? And in a sense you are. The thing that makes a difference is your integrity, right? You have to believe in your product. So not all salesmen are crooks, are they, right? Okay. And not all scientists are crooks either. So you have to believe in your product. Now, of course, if your product is awful, you can still do a good sales job, right? Okay. So it's about integrity. Let's not lose sight of that. Great question there. Appreciate it. So in our field, we communicate in different contexts. Sometimes we do the paper. This is where we publish all our stuff. Don't know what you people do. Then there's a conference, right? There's a grant, and then there's a poster and an abstract. Now, oddly enough, you might be wanting to put exactly the same content, really the same message. You have a story in all of these, but you can't use the same approach. You've got to think about it differently. Now, my focus here is going to be about talks. But you're going to hear about abstracts next week. There is a real art to this and a real set of principles. So communication has a set of concepts and ideas, and there are three elements to communication. There's why, there's how, and there's what. All right? Why are we doing something? How did we do it? What does it mean? Those are three principles. Every talk of any kind, every abstract, every paper, every grant has to have those 3 points. If you don't, you will not get them or you will not be effective. Now, what's interesting though, I'm going to put to you is that the balance of these is something we need to give a lot more thought about in a talk than we might think. So the why part, which is often relegated to a slide, 5 million Americans die of heart disease. Heart disease is bad. People die.
Next slide. J&K signaling, right? So you immediately don't connect. You all heard it, haven't you? You've all heard that slide. You've all, no connection between, you all have that slide, right? And by the end of this talk, you will have changed it, right? So the thing that actually drives people's interest in what you're doing is the why, the why, the why. And you know what? You can get your message across much more effectively by focusing on this aspect than the how or the what. And this is this golden triangle, or it's not a triangle really, the golden circle. Why is the center? That's the motivation. We're going to talk about motivation. All of you will do something if you're motivated to do it. So you have to understand your motivations. So you have to understand a little bit about yourself to be a good communicator. Why are you doing what you're doing? We'll come to this. How? What's the process? Products? What? In most technical research talks, what is the predominant focus of those three? Process, right. We're absolutely... Aren't you proud of me? I converted to the American when I say process there, it's process. But anyway, that everybody's obsessed with how did you do something, right? But I'm saying you need to cover that, but it's not the focus. So think about this from also a personal point of view. I said that. Somebody says to you on the plane or something, personally, I try and avoid conversations on the plane, but nevertheless, if somebody does that, and they say, what do? You can answer this in different ways. You can do it as a descriptive answer of what your job title is. I am a professor. I'm a professor. You're a whatever. Professor, assistant professor, whatever you are. And that can be the answer, can't it? Problem with that answer, it has no real information in it. It doesn't inspire anybody. That's what I say if I want to cut the conversation off. Because then they're going to have to ask me, a professor in what? And then I have to say, and then so on, so. So it says, I didn't mean what you do for money. I meant what do you do for the world? So every talk has to have the driver of what are you doing for the world? And that may sound pretentious. It may sound pompous. But think about it, not quite so, what are you doing for your world? The part of the world you inhabit and you're responsible for. What makes you get up? So you're all sitting here listening to me pontificating this morning. You've got motivation, right? So how do you translate that motivation across into a talk? Who are these two geezers? Watson and Crick. And they're pointing a ruler at their model of what? DNA. Now, you all know Watson and Crick got the credit for discovering DNA. But you also may know, if you know a little bit about science history, there are other people, particularly Rosalind Franklin, who actually made some of the how contributions. Right? But what they didn't effectively do is do the why. Have you ever read the paper that describes the structure of DNA? Any of you? All go and read it. Guess how long is it?
3 pages.
1 page. Right? And it says this. It has not escaped our notice that the specific pairing we have postulated immediately, there was no data by the way, because for Rosalind Franklin had the data, immediately suggests a possible copying mechanism for the genetic material. I mean, they nailed the why. I mean, absolute spectacular, right? That's why they're famous, right? Now, you can argue whether that's fair or not, that's a different thing. That's a thing about giving prizes. But from one other point of view, they got that message across, didn't they? That we are all grateful to them because they helped drive science forward. Who is this lady? Any of you here do epidemiology? She is one of the world's greatest epidemiologists, one of the first. She's a great humanitarian and a brilliant scientist, but you may not know that. This is a nurse. Still can't guess? Very good, thank you. Florence Nightingale. And she revolutionized nursing in the British Army in the Victorian times. And she was a brilliant scientist. And I'll show you a way. She was one of the first graphic epidemiologists, showing your concept and an idea through a picture. She says, Remember, this is 1860, and let's hope it doesn't apply now, but she did say it in 1860. It may seem a strange principle to enunciate as the very first requirement in a hospital that it should do the sick no harm. If you go to the hospital now, what is the possible thing that you might come out with or never come out with? Yeah. So still we have the same damn problem. There is a risk to going into a hospital, right? But in the war, Crimea War in Europe in the 1860s, this was like a million times worse. So this is causes of mortality in the army in the East April 1854 to 1855. First thing is data-driven. She's making an argument through data, which is what all of us do. The red one is non-battle deaths, and the blue one is battle deaths. And then it goes round by the months, right? So here are the months going round in the circle here. I can't control this bloody thing. Right, so the months go round in this circle here. This is an astonishingly brilliant representation of the problem. All of you, even sitting at the back there, can see the red thing is a hell of a lot bigger. And proportionately, it's bigger in certain months other than others. And she stood in front of generals, British generals, not known for their broad-minded thinking and acceptance of women, even in 1860. So, and persuaded them they had to have better hospitals, right? So she wasn't that she's the lady of the lamp, and in London, if you go, there's a statue with her with the lamp and everything, and there's Florence Nightingale's lamp on the end of Lambeth Palace, which weighs about 20,000 pounds, so I don't think it was a real lamp, but you know, that's what she's all famous for. But in reality, what she did was, and this is just one example of the fantastic pictures she made to show that epidemiology. Who are these two people? Einstein's one, right? We all got that one. Who's the other one? Oppenheimer. What did Oppenheimer do? You know?
Me and Aaron behind me, what did Oppenheimer do?
What did Oppenheimer do? You all know about it.
I feel like there was something to do with bombs or something.
You should sound more confident. It was the bomb. There you go. You know, again, he was the physicist. So Einstein was not allowed to work on the atomic bomb. Why?
Because he's defective.
He was had no security clearance. So there was a lot of anti-Semitism, and he came from, where did he come from? Who's he escaping? The Nazis in Austria and Switzerland, and so he was under suspicion, and they thought he was a bit of a communist. There's a brilliant, he didn't behave like one, I have to tell you, but they thought that. There's a brilliant autobiography called Einstein about him, if you want to know more about his life. Interesting person. So he couldn't run the project. Oppenheimer was also a very brilliant physicist. Now, they had a difficult problem. They understood that the Nazis had the physicists also who were capable of understanding nuclear physics to the level that an atomic bomb weapon could be made. He had to convince the President of the United States this was a real thing, and they had to do something about it. Now, he could have written a lot of equations, couldn't he, to show how clever he was, but he didn't. Right? We don't always, to be convincing, it's not necessary to show how clever you are. So he said, the course of the last 4 months, it has been made probable through the work of Joly in France, as well as Fermi and Szilard in America, that it may become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large mass of uranium, by which vast amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements will be generated. Now it appears almost certain this could be achieved in the immediate future. This new phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs. Now, all of you have written papers, right? Everybody here has written scientific papers. I was working on a paper for one of my students, and they had vast in there, and I crossed it out. So that's not a scientific word. We don't say vast. We say x to the 10 times more, right? When you're communicating with the President of the United States and the non-scientific public, I don't know what you do today, frankly, but when you're dealing with the non-scientific public, then you have to think in their terms. It's not talking down, it's talking in the framework of the person you're communicating with. So I gave you 3 completely different examples where the brilliance of the person as a scientist wasn't the point. There are other people around just as brilliant. The thing that made them, all of you, know, or some of you knew some and some not others, but the thing that made you know it was the fact that they communicated so brilliantly. So down to earth, let's talk about the conference. Now, in a conference, you have to know what audience you're in. Sometimes you're talking in a very specialist thing where it's only, you know, I've been to conferences, I work on mitochondria, its only thing is mitochondria. I do not have to get up and say the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah, right? So, but sometimes I'm giving an audience to people, maybe like you, very diverse, and I have to stand up and say, you have heard mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. This is all wrong, right? And then go on about that, right? So know the audience is very important. So who is this audience? You know, you were invited, or you can find out. Talk to the organizer and say, what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? Now, here's the specialist audience. Would be the mitochondria group. This could be an audience about, I went to, gave a talk at how to do precision medicine and that sort of thing, and what people are doing there were mostly genetics. They weren't doing what I was doing, metabolism. So I had to explain the role of metabolism. Or it could be at the Thanksgiving dinner, right? When Auntie Flo turns next to you and say, what do you dear? You know? And if they're British, you say, I work in research. Is that a proper job? So, there's a difference between what do I want to know, that the I being you, what do I want to know, and what the audience wants to know. Typically speaking, if I'm in the mitochondria crowd, they know all about the powerhouses, blah, 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 blah. They want to know, how did you exactly do it? What buffer? What pH? How many milligrams of protein? What did you add? Da, 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 da. And then they want to pick away the details. That's the nature of that game, right? And I play that game just as well as anyone else. But you need to know which one you're playing, right? And even in that audience, there will be some people there that you need to have a bit more of a general background. When you're looking at the audience point of view, you have to embrace their diversity. And they're saying, what do we want to know? That's when the why aspect becomes a lot more dominating element. And every single slide you do should have some element of why built into it, either in the narrative you choose, the title you choose, or how you show the data. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, when it comes down to it, giving a talk, or in fact writing a paper, or in fact writing a grant, is about telling a story. There's nothing wrong with that. It is how human beings over thousands, hundreds of thousands of years tell each other about the world. I went to the cave paintings in Lascaux last year, and there's these beautiful paintings. You've seen them, pictures of bison and the different animals. They had a full flora and fauna. They only painted 4 animals. And then there were all these little patterns of dots and things. It was about communication. They were telling a story. Who knows what that story is? We have no clue anymore, right? But there is a story there. And it is, why do we need a story? Because humans can relate to a story. It's in there. It's programmed. If you use that, you will find people easily follow you. Who is this person? One of the greatest storytellers of all time. British dude. Victorian. Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens wrote all these screenplays. You know those, right? And Oliver Twist and what have you. And if any of you have followed any of those, the thing about them, the plots are incredible, right? It ends up at the end, you know, that the person who, the Oliver Twist is the classic example, who was giving the money and is not the person he thought was giving the money, etc., etc. He actually made his money by, how did he make his money? Wealthy man, how did he make his money? How do you think? He could have written it all out at once and published it, but he didn't.
They were serials.
They were all serials. They were in newspapers. So it came out one at a time. So that means he had to tell this incredible plot with all these characters, yet in one chapter, one episode in the newspaper, you have to be engaged. You have to want to know what happened next, right? So the basic says is that's like you have a great story to tell with many elements, many characters, and unless it's your Nobel Prize award talk, and I suggest you don't even do it then, you have to select something to talk about. So select the one thing that will work. So we're going to talk about the 15-minute talk because that's more typically what you get as a short talk. Now, there are the why is a key element of storytelling. So you can have the ending first. Right? This is the Battle of Hastings, in which Britain was last invaded in 1066 by the Normans. And then this is King Harold, and it says, and this was made by the Normans, and it goes all around the world. And of course, they won, so they got the narrative, and it says, Harold the King gets it in the eye. And this is him being shot to death in the eye. This is the chronology of Coke bottles. You can do chronologies in science, but they're not that interesting, honestly. So you are not under any obligation to tell people the order of the experiments that you did or the order of the studies you did. There's a puzzle. What is this emerging here? What is this country? Oh, very good. Some people say England, but it's not an island, in fact, it's an artistic license. Nelson Mandela. Anybody going to see the Nelson Mandela film? You know, brilliant film. You know what happened then, because it's history, isn't it? Right, well, that's always true in Hollywood, but in this case it was. Even when you know the ending, it can be a gripping story of how you got there. And of course, there can be the thriller type thing with Morse, you know, also. So there's this idea of the story. You don't have to invent a new story style. You just have to match your story to a particular way of doing it. The trick here is not to mix things up. Don't start off with a chronology and a mystery at the same time. It confuses the heck out of people. So what I mean, you've heard this. First we did this, then we found this, then we found it was wrong. Well, why did you tell me? Right? I'm confused now. What's right? Which was the right bit, right? So that is a very tricky style to pull off as a scientist. Mainly because we demand from our literature a very linear story. Whatever order anything was done, we want a linear story. Right?
If you give the ending first, do people want to keep listening to the story?
You can if you're doing, depends why you're invited to do it. If you're invited to talk about a discovery you made, you have to do it that way, right? If you can do it, even if that's thing you say, this is the thing we have found. We're very surprised by this. Let me tell you how we got there, right? Either one works. Dress code. This is usually for the postdocs and the students who don't have any common sense, and they'll, be overly cool or underdressed or overdressed in the conference. The point is be comfortable, right? So you have this kind of basic material, which is very, very text heavy, the paper, but that will not work. PowerPoint, the slides and that, they are visual, they are not text. You should never have more than a few lines of text on any PowerPoint slide. So then you've got to work on this information transfer versus motivation. So the paper is an information transfer mechanism, isn't it? Anybody who picks up a paper knows that the goal is to transfer information from the writer to the reader. A talk is different. A talk is about transferring information, but also the motivation that went behind what you did. So I'm going to give you an example, see if I can pull it off, of presenting the first slide in a conference, one of which is an information content, the other is a motivation, right? One is how, one is why. So we'll start off with the how. Now, so this is the introductory slide. All right, so we imagine we're in the conference. Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you today, and we'd like to share with you some of our new ideas about diabetes. What I'm showing you here is that the beta cell makes insulin. The insulin chain is made as a protein with very high amounts, and we have a mutated mouse model of this in which insulin is changed. The insulin changed from cysteine to tyrosine. That mutation means the proteins misfold. That causes what we know as ER stress. Then that then causes the beta cell to die and leads to hyperglycemia. This mutation occurs in humans. I'm going to tell you our data about this. That, nothing wrong with that, I don't think. Strictly informational, right? Let's do it a different way. So look at the title, the Akita type 1 diabetes mouse model. So no real information in that. New title. Why do beta cells die? All right, we'll do it again. Thank you for the invitation today to share some of our work. What I'm going to talk to you about is our new studies about why beta cells die. You might think after studying insulin for 50 years, diabetes for 50 years, that we know all about this, but surprisingly we don't. I'm going to tell you about insulin as one of the prime drivers and mutations in insulin of beta cell death. Insulin in humans has mutations, and these mutations actually contribute to diabetes. One of them is cysteine to tyrosine. That may seem a small change, but that changes how the protein folds. It doesn't fold anymore, and it kills the ER. That then results in beta cell death and leading to hyperglycemia. So now we're beginning for the first time to see what are the mechanisms that make beta cells die. Can you tell the difference? Which was better? Thank you. If you said the first, I'd just have to go. All right, but you can see the difference. The title sets it up differently. And immediately, this was, by the way, an ending first. Immediately, you think, oh, I wasn't interested in, if you're in a conference, a third of the people don't care, a third of the people are hungover, and a third of the people are interested in what you're going to say. So you can have a look at the people in front of you, and if they're fiddling about on their phones, you've lost them, right? But most people just say, oh, okay, there could be something interesting here, and they might pay attention. Clarity in slide design is the driver. Yes, you can get more information on by animating things and adding all sorts of things, but clarity is the driver. Less is more. And to quote Einstein, who could really understand things, if you cannot explain it simply, you don't understand it. And one really great thing about giving talks is sometimes you get up there and you realize you don't understand your own work, because the process of putting that out there in front of you gives you a new insight. So make it simple enough that you get it, right? Because then at least one person understood, right? What are the 3 worst things you can do in a talk?
Go over the top.
Brilliant.
Read word for word.
Yeah, some more things?
Too much information.
Too much information.
No eye contact.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. You guys are great. Going over time. So I'm going to give you all of the solutions to those 3 major problems, right? And if you do these things, these will not be a problem. Going over the time, when you get, any of you given a talk for a job interview? Come on, be honest. It doesn't matter if you're looking for a job. That's what we do. It's like, academic sport. All right. So, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm drifting. I'm going to be drifting more and more into the grey areas here. But anyway, the only way you can lose a job with your talk is to do what? Go over time, strangely. I mean, I've been on loads of search committees, and I've sat there, and we have to have somebody from another school or something, and it's some hardcore biochemistry or cell biology. And I said, what did you think of that? Oh, I didn't understand a word of it. It was great. I'm going, okay, good. And what it was that they picked up on the energy, the the person knew what they were talking about, and they finished on time. So it's actually a very simple equation. For giving a research talk, it's a target, you've got 15 minutes and you're going to have 0.8 minutes per slide. That is 17 slides. That's not 38 slides with animation, that's 17 slides, okay? The introduction is 4 slides, hypothesis 1 slide, data presentation, 9 or 10 slides to show. So you've got to embed in your data some explanation. I'll show you how you do that. Summary, and then an acknowledgement. So typically, I would say that there's 5 slides here, 7 slides here, approximately 50%, which is about why. And typically, it's about maybe 10%, okay? So don't do that, right? If you do, it will be confusing, or more confusing than it needs to be. So, boring the audience. Whose problem's that?
Everyone.
No, it's not. Whose problem is it, do you think? It's the speaker, it's yours. You know, sometimes in academia, we have multiple excuses. The reviewers are idiots, you know, it went to the wrong study section, you know, it didn't go over well. Actually own some stuff, you know. If you give a boring talk, it's because you're a boring person, right? Now, you might be a boring person anyway, and we can talk about that on another course, but actually, you have to be engaged. The only time I've seen people get bored in talks, do that sort of thing, is when the person giving the talk isn't interested in their own talk. Now, this is a why thing, and you've got to dig deep and say, why are you presenting? And you've got to own it. You can't be this passive vehicle for information. You have got to be part of that story. So you have to put a little bit of thought about why you're doing that. And it's not to get a PhD, okay? Or, you know, to get another paper or to get a grant. It's to understand X, Y, or Z, like with the maths thing, right? Are you enthusiastic? So you need some friends, I'm sure you've got friends still, and to see you give a talk and then give you some honest feedback and then don't argue with it, right? So, you know all this one, curb your enthusiasm. This is a guy thing, and this is, of course, a guy of about my age, right? Who's seen it all, done it all, totally bored, can't be bothered, not sure why they're there, right? That does not work, does it? Okay, and here's another one, right? And you've all seen this too. I am so excited to be here today to tell you all about my great work, and it's, you know, and you start off at a rate of talking which is 10 times more than any human being. Maybe bats can get it, but no human beings can get it, right? So it says, you're at a 10, we needed you about a 7, right? So we all are not quite sure how you come across when you're actually giving a talk. So understand how you are as a performer. We'll talk a little bit about that. So this is another great storyteller. This is an American storyteller. This is, so I'm not totally British biased. I've got some Americans in here. So who is this? It's Mark Twain.
That's it, really.
Yeah, I know. Very good. Right? And he was called brilliant. And he says, there are 2 types of speakers, those that are nervous and those that are liars. Right? Now, all of you giving a talk, who was nervous? I'm nervous giving this talk. And you think, what, you're joking? No, because the thing is, if you don't think about it, I was working out, I've given this talk 25 times now. But every time I do it, I look at it again, I change it, I move the slides around, I change the examples, I play with it. And if you're not, you've got to use the nerves to work with you. That little bit of adrenaline makes your brain work faster, keeps you on tune, is a good thing, embrace it. That's not the same as blind terror, okay? If you are scared to death, and some people do have phobias about these things, then, you know, better living through chemistry, I say. So you've got to work on that. If you have anxiety, that's not the same as being nervous, okay? Nervous, anxiety, terrified, right? You want to be in the nervous thing. Now, it's an art. You have got to be a personality somewhat beyond the personality you actually have. Perhaps not quite as much as this, but something like that, right? Any of you watch this? This is The Amazing Mrs. Maisel. And it's a brilliant show. And it's about housewife in the 1950s in New York, who is actually a very funny person, who decided to do stand-up comedy. And stand-up comedy, as you know, is brutal, and I recommend it to you. It's that control of the audience. It's that absorption in the person. It's the fact you make a presence, that you are in charge. So never give a talk sitting down, ever, ever, ever. Right? Why? You're not in control. You're not there. You're not that presence, right? So anxiety in you is one thing. Anxiety in the audience is a disaster, because then they feel nervous for you and the whole thing goes, you know, haywire. And one of the things you could, I don't have a lawyer. Maybe I have a, is this a laser pointer?
No. No. It's so weird.
Oh, no, we don't have this anymore. But there is a laser pointer where there's this thing like that, and they point at the audience, and then they think the SAS or the commandos are going to burst through the thing. You know, you've been targeted, right? So don't move the pointer all over the place and induce audience anxiety. So we'll talk about that. Other distractions. Dress comfortably, we talked about that. Do not mumble. You have to talk in a voice which is, I don't talk like this all the time. It has to be declamatory. It has to project. It has to engage. And the pace that you talk makes a difference to the way people listen. The pace that you talk makes a difference to the way people listen. Yeah? Do not speak too fast, because people you can't get enough contrast in your voice and the tone, and people won't listen. Do not read from the slides of the script, because basic thing is you can read from the slide of the script, can't you? Right? So you've lost control immediately, right? Second is you're back. You're not making eye contact anymore. Shuffle. You know, I know there's a thing at the moment. We have a very senior person in the School of Medicine who thinks he's on some TV show, who has to move around like this. You know, like, and it's absolutely distracting as hell to me. And the other one is the shuffling, you know, and this sort of thing. And the worst one is this. You seen this before? That's where you all lean in front for that white paper bag, you know, because you feel you're on a ship or something, right? You know. So you've got to keep still. Don't move around, because I'll tell you, there are very, very few audiovisual systems that will pick you up if you start moving around. There is not a massive amount of investment in these microphones, okay? And they're 10 years old anyway. Don't talk to the screen, not the audience. Weather forecast. This is where, okay, the data came in from the north here, went across North Alabama, and then I think now we'll have a tornado and it's going out in the Gulf of Mexico. If you're going to point at something, point at something. Don't do this thing, right? You're laughing, but you've seen it. You've all seen it, right? You may have all already done it. Right. The information overload. I love this. This is in Wales, and it's just a simple roadworks, and there's a traffic light. So there's a traffic light that says, don't overtake. You can't anyway. The sign is in Welsh and English. There's a bump. There's a keep left, and they're saying, information overload. This is an invitation to an accident, because by the time the person's figured out what they're supposed to do, they've crashed into something, right? So the solution to too much information is a very simple and very effective. Control the flow of information. Only give the information to the people in the sequence you want, in the way you want, to the amount they need, no more, no less. So here is a signpost, and you know, there's all sorts of things you can do, right, and that sort of thing. And I'm a very focused person, so it was either the pub or the tea room, and of course I decided the pub, right? But you saw how I did that. Now, you were all looking at that, reading all that thing, saying, where the heck is that, you know, everything like that, weren't you? You were saying, well, what's that? That's interesting. Now you're only looking at the pub. So control that flow of information, and I'll give you some clues how to do that. Now it comes back to the structure. So the concept is why, the method of the how, the data is what, and the interpretation is back to why. So you have the trick is to have a concept slide at the beginning, which has some scheme elements in it, which set up the study you're going to do. Then you have your data. Then you have exactly the same slide at the end, except for the fact you now add in what you discovered and what you found in that. So that gives the people a sense of journey, the sense of having actually learned something. So what do you do with this stuff, right? This is the raw material. How do you make slides which you can interpret and understand in this way? So you've got, these are all my data of one kind and another. These are all sorts of gene array type things and metabolomics, you know, complicated progress curves, multi-panel figures, pictures of cells, lots of text, right? How do we handle that? And first of all, don't just go and paste your figure from your paper into your slide. Think about it a little bit. So, a thing about slide design. Either black or white. This is the same slide as you saw before, but now, of course, you can't. It's one of the ones that you can. Now you can't see anything because the shading messes it up. You have a logo, but you do not have to have UAB saves the universe on every single slide. Okay, we all know this, so we don't really need to have it everywhere, right? Once at the beginning and once at the end is sufficient. So have a slide design which is black or white. Why? Why is that good? From a practical, easy to read, and also, very important point, you have no control of whether this projector bulb was changed in the last 5 years. And the intensity of these is all over the place, right? Another reason.
Not distracting.
Very good. So that's a good point. So if you want to convert any of your slides into a review or something else, you don't have to completely redesign it, right? You can use it as is. So start strong. You need a conceptual, a 30,000 foot view. And this is a map of the metabolism from 30,000 feet. And I'm going to say here's metabolism. And the only important thing in it is mitochondria. So I'm already focusing, right? And then I say T cells have metabolism and it changes. Macrophages have metabolism and it changes. Fibrosis has metabolism and it changes. Platelets have metabolism and it changes. I'm going to tell you about how that metabolism is changing, what is common and what is different. So it's a 30,000 foot. But even if you're doing a 15-minute talk, take a 30,000 foot position. So then you get into some data. This is explaining what play you. So if I'm going to go all the way through this. Now, that's the final place I want to be. But if I just throw that up there, you can't follow that, and it's too complicated. So what I do, in the paper though, it's like that. So what I do is like this. I say, what we're going to measure is oxygen consumption and glycolysis here. Monocytes have oxygen consumption and glycolysis. Neutrophils don't have oxygen consumption. Lymphocytes have more oxygen consumption than glycolysis. Platelets have oxygen consumption and glycolysis. You can all agree that now, right? Yeah. If I just went through pointing at each one, you wouldn't be able to follow what I was saying, especially if you're not a metabolism person. If I take the glucose out, they all go to a similar place, telling me that glucose is important in all of them. So you can see how excuse me, I'm going the wrong way. So you can see, that's where I ended up with, but by actually controlling the flow of information, I gave it to you in a very, easy way. Who here works on metabolism? Nobody, you see, but you all understood that perfectly, right? Yeah, there we are. But it was easy because I said, this is oxygen, this is glycolysis, these are the two changing. Now, I don't expect you to read this. Who's heard somebody say that? All the time. It's stupid. Well, what did you put it there for then? Right? So you can get around this. You can say, this is proteomics, in fact. So we did a proteomic study in which we measured 250 proteins, which are modified. I'm going to show you how they're linked in to the list. So here is the scheme of the proteins that were affected in platelet function. So I've immediately pushed Y to the front. So I've subsumed this complicated data set into a Y data set. So this is what platelets do. And then I'll say, all right, let's talk about adhesion, platelets sticking. Platelets going to the subendothelial space. And now I have the list of proteins underneath, see? So now instead of having this disordered list where everybody goes and looks for a protein they can actually know or understand, right? I've now structured it and I'm making a point. Okay, binding and then aggregation. So, and by doing this, I've actually taken the high ground. I've taken the position, you are going to trust me that I know how to do proteomics. I've thrown the how away, really, and I'm just going to show you what the data is.
Question? I think I know what you're going to say, but making slides like this takes a ton of time.
Yeah, well, you can afford to take the ton of time and do a really good job, or you don't and do not a good job, right? It's a risk, benefit. There is so much benefit to this. And once you've started doing it,
Are there programs that help you with this kind of schematics and making things more visually?
yeah, they're called students. That's my program. I joke not. So actually it's good with them because in fact it's a good learning exercise for them because they have to deconstruct these schemes they see in the figures and make them work for themselves. And in that understanding, they understand them much better. The investment, it comes right back to the beginning. You wouldn't bat an eyelid spending 2.5, 3 months writing the graph. Why not spend a few hours putting a total? And by the way, if you keep the same fonts, you keep the same backgrounds, and you keep the same style, you start to build up a big library of slides, so you don't have to do stuff from scratch anymore. But it does take investment at the beginning. Now look what I've done. I've taken that complicated list of things, which none of you could read, and I've put it into the Y, the context of how a platelet works. This is another kind of data. This is a heat map. Well, you know what a heat map is, all of you? So a heat map means if I measure how tall people are in this population and how tall people are in that population, if they're the tallness is graduated by the color from red and green, all right? So if I take platelets that I've done nothing to, and then I add this toxic compound, doxorubicin, which is actually used in breast cancer treatment, actually, then that has become very red. That means it's very different from that one. And this is another way of doing it. This is a PCA plot, right? So how do you, this is a typical output from this style of big data information. How do I use that? So here's another one, and I'll show you how to break it up. There are 4 different conditions. There are four different treatments in 2 different conditions. So quite a complicated experimental matrix. How you do it is this. First of all, you just show the control, 2 controls. And at the side here, you now have a scheme of what's actually happening. So you have again, you only show the first thing where you get people, this is what you're looking at. If this one is red and this is blue, it's now gone. There's much more of this here than here. Now people are oriented to the style of data. And then you animate each column in at a time, and then you can talk about it each at a time. So, right? So bullet points, watch out for that. You can get a bit out of control. Restrict yourself to 2, 3 comments per slide, okay? Text is text. So here is, I want to say these things. Heart disease is bad. That's what I said. Heart disease is bad, and if you get heart disease, you'll be sick, right? But I can do this differently. I can make a picture. So now I have a picture, and I can introduce it the different types of heart disease, and now I have 3 bullet points. I can talk you through that. I can convince you that this is something important, and then I can make it simpler. Right? Finish strong. Come back to where you were before, and if you recall now, I don't know whether you do, but I talked about the different cells, and then in the middle of that, I talked about metabolism, and now I'm linking all of this together. So you have this strong schematic slide. You have a strong message at the end. Some basic things: check out the venue, check your talk on the actual computer. Are there 3 screens? If there are 3 screens, you're going to have to use the cursor, not the pointer. Make sure the slides are in the right order, right? If you have these squiggly lines on the things and like this, then it is a spelling mistake, so don't add it into your dictionary. And do the spell check, and always have a backup. Have a box in box, or email it yourself, or have a different flash drive. Always have a backup. Oh, it's a Mac PC problem. There is no such thing. What is there a problem? People who have Macs are not prepared to have the right connector. Did you have anybody come to give you a talk where they said, do you have the connector for the projector? Yeah, no, it's your computer, not ours, right? So be prepared. You are the one responsible. Whatever kind of computer, you know, tablet, PC, doesn't matter. You're the one responsible. And nobody minds being called up before. What they do mind is 2 minutes before you're meant to start, having students scrambling up and down the building trying to find an adapter. What flag is that? It's the glorious state of Alabama, isn't it? But why does it appear randomly in your talks, right? That happens when you have embedded data on one computer and you haven't transferred it with the file. So if you want to transfer complex data sets and images, like from Excel or from any of these plotting things, you either got to make sure that the embedded data file is also with it, or alternatively, you copy it as a picture. Copying it as a picture, if you don't need to animate it in that way, is much better, because then it can't change, it won't get distorted, etc., etc. Right? So that means I cannot find the primary data. Questions? Questions are the most nerve-wracking bit, really. So always listen. Don't cut the person off, right? Be open and interested. You know, probably none of you are very good at poker. Well, most of you, I'm just looking at you for the last hour. None of you all show what you're feeling on your faces, right? Which is not a bad thing. But that means your audience can also see that. So if it's a stupid question, you go, you know, it's going to show, right? Thank the questioner and don't look irritated, right? Multiple questions within one. This is a person of my vintage who is decided that there's so many things they've got on their mind that they're not actually formulating a question. So they'll ramble up to the microphone and say, well, that was a very interesting talk, thank you very much. Don't bother saying that, by the way, because there's no real point. And then you say, I have 7 questions. And then they go through a list of questions, right? So answer the last one, or any one that you got. Because I guarantee you, the person asking has forgotten, and the people listening don't care, right? So just answer anyone, right? Questions in the middle of your talk. In a 15-minute talk, that will never happen in a conference, and if it does, ignore it and just carry on, because that's not right. If you're actually doing in a university seminar, that can be quite good. Good point, I'll get to that later. Never flip through your slides to the front. Never do that. Because it will because the person asking you're all in some department here, right? When you go to the seminar, there's always somebody who harasses the speaker, isn't there? Right? And you're following the thing, and then they flick through. Now you don't follow it anymore. So think about it from your point of view. You don't have to do that, right? Let me come back to it. You can answer, but very short. Now, if you want to, and you feel comfortable about it, and not much is at stake, like a job, then you can actually engage in the discussion. And that can be quite fun. But the penalty is what? Time. You cannot go over another 15 minutes. That doesn't entitle you. So you're going to have to cut something. But that's okay. They can be a lot of fun, very interesting, and very, you know. Take a minute to get yourself back. Difficult one. We did that and did not get the same result. Doesn't surprise me. You don't get much right, do you? So try not to be snippy when you get that. You say you have to still be polite. I'd like to discuss that with you in some detail later. We've noticed some differences with cell type. You cannot resolve that kind of aggressive question on the spot, right? Impossible, right? So just deflect it. You did not cite my work. Well, it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you know, and I don't have the lecture from the lady before, so I can't find it, right? So you've got no excuse. You just say, yes, we're aware of this parenting. I should have mentioned it. There's no point in arguing it. Probably you should, but you can only mention it so much, right? You should do this experiment. This is a senior person thing too, right? And whether you did or not, you said, yes, we have the same idea. And we're now doing it because it's a bit of a cheeky experiment, cheeky question. Doing studies along these lines, or you could say, great experiment, we'll do it when we get back. Or you can offer to collaborate. I mean, it shows an interest, but it's a bit aggressive, but look past that, right? Long statement with no question. Yeah, that's you have to be sympathetic. That's the first beginnings of Alzheimer's, right? Why am I up here? What am I doing here? What was I going to say? You've been at a conference, there's, you know, I've been there. So you've been in these conferences, there's 10 people in front of you, right? And it gets to your turn and you think, why am I standing here? The answer that never fails is what? The answer that never fails is what? I don't know. Now, here's an interesting thing. I don't know is there are going to be some I don't know because it's research. You don't know everything. So what's going to happen is that, but you notice people like me don't say I don't know. We say, interesting point. If I have no clue what you just said. We thought this. I don't understand what you said, but I'm going to tell you something totally unrelated. We should look into this more. I don't understand what you said, and I'm never going to look at it again either. Right? So that when you're sitting, you can amuse yourself with these little repartee of these different things, the games people play. Be polite, be nice. It is hard work for me to get up here and do this from you when I got in a flight back from a flight last night from England, right? If I put some effort, show some appreciation, right? Stay on time as a speaker, be interested, and answer questions thoughtfully. Don't do email or the phone if you're the audience. Talk to your neighbour, get up in the middle, come late, leave before the questions are finished. I mean, that's a UAB habit. Get the lunch and bugger off when the question, sometimes then the talk isn't finished, they disappear. Don't fall asleep. You have to, if you have to actually go to bed earlier, or alternatively, you have to sleep looking awake, which is something you can do with practice. And do ask questions. Questions show engagement, mark of respect, help the speaker. They're part of the dialogue. And what I've noticed is, as I've, matured, as we would say, in my career, is that not enough of your generation are asking questions. I mean, it's part of the dialogue. It's part of the way of moving science forward, right? And if you don't do that, you'll get what all of you don't like is all the old boys and some girls getting up together and complimenting each other, or they're either do one of, it's bimodal, isn't it? They're either over complimenting each other or savaging each other. So neither are very attractive. So unbiased questions are good. There we go. Acknowledgements, be generous. It can really, really, really upset you if somebody came along who was in the lab before and say, you showed some of my data, but you didn't mention me. Find out from who you're collaborating with, who you Ask your collaborators, who should I mention on the slide? You know, because it will really upset you. The Simon Sinek is one of the TED Talks, and I recommend it to you. Saying it's a very short TED Talk, 10, 15 minutes, and he talks nothing about science, but he talks about why same people, the same thing I did, the same people who are doing the same thing, you know the Wright brothers, but you don't know the other people who were actually just as successful. For example, very interesting about communication, and I said there should be acknowledgements. This is my research group and collaborators who've had to listen to me attempt to put into practice what I've told you. All right, well, thank you very much. I've got any other questions, happy to answer. And more or less on time, so.
Can you say a word about TED Talks? I think that they're great for engaging with the general public, but I hear some people say when I listen to them now that it seems like they're dumbing down very complicated scientific ideas. And sometimes a lot of the nuance in the scientific method or the background is lost in the attempt to make a big splash and tell a story in a way that doesn't seem to ring as true, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. The question is about the compromises you have to make in doing a TED Talk in order to make it understandable at a broad level. And is that a dumbing down? I'll put it to you another way. It's about defining the audience and the purpose of what the TED Talk is. And I think the idea is that it's not meant to be a learned discourse for specialists. It's meant to be a broad thing for all of us. And I would say that it's something we ought to, let's do a session on how to do TED Talks for this, because all of us need to know how to do that. And a friend of mine in UCLA I was just visiting with, he said, have you heard of Adam Alda? An American actor, brilliant actor, is in a program series called MASH, and famous actor. And he now does a company about helping scientists communicate. We should get him down,
He charges $30,000 for a time. So, but otherwise,
we should.
Richard looked into this.
I'll do it for less, okay? But and they did that. And what happened was that my friend said he was next to somebody who was an Academy member, almost got the Nobel Prize. And neither of them could understand. They would say, explain what you're doing in 5 minutes. Neither of them could understand. Explain in 2 minutes. Neither could understand. Explain in 1 minute, then they understood. Then they said, go back to 5 minutes. So I think communication does not have to be a compromise of content, intensity, or impact, right? The best TED Talks are not that. Any others? Question? All right, well, thank you all very much.